There she is. She
Ah,
has the glasses on today.
yeah, I got my new specs on.
Awesome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's been a bit since we've done a live, so
Yeah,
I miss it.
me too.
hmm
I miss our meeting of the minds
The
happening
meeting of the
face to
minds,
face.
even though we've actually seen each other in person now that, after what, like a year and a half or something?
Yeah, it's so exciting to hang out
Yeah.
again, but
Yeah.
it
So we
does
should
feel like it's
do,
been a while since we've done it via live.
yeah, we should do like a live show
Oh, yeah, like from
sometime.
the same room.
Yeah.
That's a great
That would be
idea.
amazing. Oh my God, from the same room. Can you imagine?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It feels so surreal still.
Yes. So today we're going to have another juicy conversation all about expectations.
Mhm.
So basically, I was just giving the scoop, expectations that other people set on us, expectations we set on ourselves, expectations we set on other people, society's expectations.
Yep.
Ciao, ciao, hello there. And just maybe some ways that we can manage them or kind of get both of our insight on it. So,
Yeah.
where would you like to start on such a juicy topic here?
Well, it's funny because I told one of my coworkers that I was doing this live, and I asked what it was about, and I said expectations.
hmm
And they said, other people's expectations, F them. So I was like, it's kind of in the neighborhood of the point that we want to make, because
Right.
I guess the big thing that I was thinking about when you and I decided to do this topic is I think about why in my life people have expectations of me most of the
hmm
time.
Yeah.
And I think that it is in order for them to not worry as much about me or
Yeah.
about themselves.
hmm
So you wonder how it's really helping anybody to have expectations of somebody if that means, oh, well, if the person I care about is doing the least risky thing possible,
hmm
if I expect them to live a super low risk, non-adventurous life, then that makes me calmer. But it's
Right.
like, well, why is it about you? Why is it about your comfort and not
Right.
mine?
Right. And let me just say that um, people set expectations on us, right? So
Mhm.
when we feel like triggered by that,
Yep.
and we're like, oh, well, he or she, whoever, shouldn't, my family shouldn't set expectations on me. That's us setting an expectation on them.
That's a
so,
great point.
so
Yeah.
life is like a big cesspool of like expectations, and a lot of it is rigidity. So
Yeah.
it's basically we're not very present. We live in our heads most of the time. So we're either attaching to, a whole other aspect that we can get into is when people attached to, say you've done a lot of inner work or you've grown or you're spiritually grown or a certain way. And we can bring up celebrities in this case too, and I will work Pee Wee Herman into this. Um, but say, I'll bring up the example of like Jim Carrey, right?
Okay.
He, known as the funny guy, and and Britney Spears as well. They have
Mhm.
this to kind of uphold this, the expectation that society sets on them to be this particular person or brand or label. Like Jim Carrey's like this funny man, and then he went all spiritual, right? So
Mhm.
some people were like, oh, he went nuts, right? He went crazy. Or Britney
Yep.
Spears went nuts because now she's speaking her mind and she's no longer like on this platform. So
Mhm.
that's a whole other topic we could get into, the pressure and the rigidity and how people and family will attach to older versions of you. So if you've
Yes.
changed, it's like you're now living in two different worlds, two different parallel universes
Totally.
because
Yep.
and the most important thing is obviously yourself and caring for yourself and you having clarity on your own life.
Mhm.
So sometimes we can get caught up in attaching to other people's expectations of us, and we're
Mhm.
no longer present with ourselves. We're say this is us, this is our true self. We're now being misaligned, we're now being redirected back into a place of ego or whatever it is. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot of different avenues with this, and it can get mucky, I
Yeah,
think.
and I think people love to take advantage of people pleasers also. Even
hmm
I think they just partly realize they're doing it. So
Yeah.
like with celebrities, right? If you're a person whose livelihood is depending on how many people like you and see your work, then
Right.
people are going to hang that over your head. It's like, well, I don't like this way you're behaving.
Right.
I'm not going to watch your stuff or listen to your stuff anymore. And that does
Yeah.
put pressure on people, just like in interpersonal relationships of ours. Like, I'm sure like our relationship with our family members, like your family members, they spend decades with you and they can identify who's the biggest people pleaser in the family. In my case,
Mm-hmm.
me. And I know that people have used that against me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, I can have the most rigid expectations of Tara because I know that if I'm telling her that she's disappointing me, then she's going to be the most upset.
You're triggered by
So,
it.
yeah. So that's
Yeah.
the person I'm going to target the most.
Yeah. So that's why it's important, step number one is to set your boundaries when it comes to expectations, right? Not only have
Right.
clarity on who you are and taking care of yourself
Mm-hmm.
and not living so much in your head, but, being present with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
nourishing yourself. But yeah, setting those boundaries, maybe if that means even limiting time with people who suck your energy until you have the capability to build yourself up and build kind of a protective bubble around you.
Yeah.
Instead of, because a lot of times what we do, if we're triggered, we just fight back, or I know in my case, I get very defensive, like with my family, I
Mm-hmm.
get very, very defensive,
Yep.
because even if, somebody says something and it's very small in our head, we think back to past occasions or situations where it was a very uncomfortable experience. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to avoid pain, essentially.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to feel rejection from
Right.
not living up to somebody's
So
expectations.
sometimes, even though nothing's really going on, we spiral it out of control
Mm-hmm.
because we're all up here. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And it's bad. Like the worst kind of expectation setting is from people who are not flexible. Like, I don't like the idea of, well, you expected me to be a certain way from many years ago, and now I'm a different person and I want different things.
Hmm.
Therefore, you can go jump in a ditch. Like this, it's not supposed to be about rebelling against the other person
Right.
and like defeating somebody else.
Hmm.
I like being able to say, well, what I want for myself has changed. How can we just change our expectations of each other where we can kind of both benefit and understand each other more?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of experiences I've had in my life where someone's like, well, no, I mean, this is what I want from you. So if you're not doing literally ABC, I'm going to keep fighting you on it, or you're going
Hmm.
to be very sad and agitated.
Right.
So it's hard to
Yeah.
work with that.
It is hard to work with that. That's where communication is key.
Yeah.
Like, I could communicate on videos and stuff like that, but like my personal life, I'm not the best communicator, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So communication is key because a lot of times we're thinking something and we think it's almost like the person's psychic and understands where we're coming from, but they don't. Like they're trying to, if it's our family, they're trying to protect us, right? So
Yeah.
it's also projection too, projecting something from the past onto a current situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's communication and what was the other thing I was going to say? It just like flew away. It'll come back to me.
I've
But
been there many a time.
yeah. But communication. Oh, and the other fact, like, you know, we can't change other people and they can't change us no matter how much, how much goes into it, how much you
Right.
say. Like the person, if I want to change, I have to consciously make the decision to change. Nobody can, they can spew all the information at me and tell me all the things that are wrong with me and criticize me and judge me and do all these things. But at the end of the day, I have free will and I am consciously choosing if I want to change. And if I want to change, or if you want to change, hopefully you're not doing it you can change for somebody else, but then you're
Mm-hmm.
going to go back to that misalignment off of who you really are. And you're getting farther and farther and farther and farther away from yourself.
Exactly.
And that's where we see people pleasing coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and people pleasing, it leads people to then be deficient because there's such an imbalance of energy there. You're giving, you're
Totally.
giving, you're giving, and you're never giving to yourself.
Hmm.
And just from an energy perspective, there's a huge, huge imbalance there.
Totally. And it's
Yeah.
ironic too, because I think that's where the weakest relationships are, right? Like if
Hmm.
somebody is in that kind of a sapped place, all their energy sapped, how are you really supposed to have a productive relationship with somebody when you feel like there's such an imbalance there? It's like, well,
Right.
if I'm living for somebody else, then how are you really, it's going to come through in the way you treat the relationship.
Hmm.
So like the person that you're making happy, they're not going to be happy ultimately because they're going to see where there's something missing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And when your defense is down, then you have more holes in your aura, and people can penetrate you more, and you can
Hmm.
be, manipulated more. Again, it goes
Right.
back to protecting yourself. And like I said, if you don't have the means or you feel very depleted where you can't protect yourself, then maybe you need to limit your exposure until you can get to that point.
Hmm. Oh, and I see,
Make
oh,
this
that's my friend Mike, my son.
like story of the last year and a half of my life. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's something that a lot of us, most of us go through, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It's like when you look back on that, I don't think anybody ever, Mike, I think you can agree. I don't think people look back on living a life like that. If they change it, they don't say, "Oh, I really regret breaking out of that, and I wish I could just go back to living for other people."
Right. Right. And a lot of it is people just aren't consciously aware that they're doing it. They're so programmed to do it. And
Sure,
society, this goes into society, right?
sure.
Societies, labels, and this is where I'm going to bring in Pee Wee Herman, um,
I was waiting.
just because I gotta, Tara's a big Pee Wee Herman fan,
Oh yeah.
um, so he's like the entertainer and
Hmm.
this role model for children,
Right.
maybe for some people. And what was he was caught in the adult theater masturbating, right? So right
Yep.
away society puts the stamp down and stomps their feet and says, this is not right.
Hmm.
This is not by my expectation of Pee Wee Herman, therefore I'm disgusted.
Right.
Meanwhile, this is his personal life, he's doing whatever, and this can apply to any celebrity, again, Britney Spears, Jim Carrey. Even when a band changes or evolve their sound, right?
Yeah.
First, let me just say the universe is constantly changing, in a state of change. As human beings, as part of that universe, we are constantly changing. We're not made to be stagnant. We're not made to just be stuck in one place or even in a lot of cases, one job. People will see, like,
Yeah.
because we get bored or feel like we're unfulfilled, and we need to evolve and grow in some ways for our
Hmm.
own, like, spiritual self-growth.
Hmm.
And yeah, with a band, like, they evolve their sound because they don't want to keep putting out albums that sound the same.
Right.
So people will judge and say, oh, well, that's not the same band. Like, they changed, they sold out, they did this, they
Hmm.
did that. So there's always going to be criticisms whenever you as a human being change or try to evolve. But you know what? You have to cancel out the noise, and you have to keep that wall up, or it's about communication. There's a number of things. Yeah.
It, it's funny because there are so many times when you can look at somebody changing as an opportunity for you to become a better, wiser person. And I think, I think you've come to a good point, one of your many good points, that it's about like resisting growth.
Hmm.
Somebody gets to a certain point in life where any more growth, or like they've gotten used to an idea, and looking at it from another point of view is going to be too uncomfortable for them. So they
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
run from it, and you can just get to such a better place in life by looking at something in a whole new way. So like when I think about some frames of mind I used to have, and then everything that I've learned in the past, I'd say 5 years, particularly the last year, about like the way you look at racism and homophobia,
Hmm.
transphobia. At first, you read certain things and you kind of feel like you should check yourself, right? It's like, oh, the way I looked at that thing, that was wrong, or that was
Right.
totally off base. And your gut reaction, or mine a lot of the time, is defense. I hear you. I'm a defensive person naturally too. And it's like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to feel beat up on. Oh, everybody's beating up on me. But I'm like, no, they're not. It's good to learn. It's good to learn how to be a better person and just think about something that you never would have thought of before. And it just makes you so much, it just makes you relate to everything and everyone in the world in a stronger way.
Yeah, in a different way. It shifts your perspective. Yeah.
Right. I can't really think of a better feeling than knowing that you're learning how to be a kinder, more open-minded person. Like that's a great feeling. And just the fact that some people just interpret all of this learning opportunity as an attack. And that's where these
threatening.
It's like, no, I expect everything to be the same because otherwise it's going to be too weird. This is all just so weird.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up like the topic of prejudice, racism, homophobia, because it's such a big thing going on. And it totally relates to what you just said. And it's this rigidity. It's the pressure that we put on ourselves, that society puts on that and we feel stuck. And it goes back to our instinct. Like we're trying to protect something. We're trying to protect ourselves. So change is threatening in a lot of cases. So right away, people are like, yeah, it's too weird. Why can't things just stay the same? It's for comfort, for the comfort level. It's the same reason why it's really difficult to go out of your comfort zone. Or if you're scared to death of public speaking, to go on a live or stand in front of like 100 people or something like that. Right? The body goes into this reaction state and it freezes up and it doesn't know what to do. And it's the same reason why when somebody changes around you, people can't comprehend it. They're like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I'm still attached to this old version of this person in my head, like for years and years and years and years. And suddenly there's like this new person and I just don't know what to do with it. I'm confused. I'm lost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like just learning about, I guess for me in particular, was learning about all these things that you would never think are built on something unsavory, right? Like just very, very everyday things that are normalized in society. Like I guess an example would be, there are sex educators that are on Instagram and they talk about how there are so many things in the world that are centered on like cisgendered, hetero relationships. Straight people, like that's always, it's not like anybody's lashing out against other types of people or relationships. It's just that certain things are looked at as this is the default, this is normal.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, how that's like the bottom line no matter what is going on, because even though things are changing, things are evolving, the whole of society is not yet ready for this big shift.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Everyone's getting up in arms about, oh, did you see this commercial with the two women? And it's like, yeah, like, like I think that's the whole thing, like society's expectations are that kind of stuff is going to be taboo, just like Pee Wee Herman. Like Pee Wee Herman masturbating in a theater, that's taboo. Like when I was a kid, I remember it being kind of driven into my mind by what I was seeing and reading, that
right
he
versus
did something
wrong.
Horrible.
Right versus wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And like he was some kind of like predator deviant. And then when I got older, I was like, no, actually, that's not anything.
It's just a guy. Yeah.
Right. Not victimizing anybody.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That whole thing, like straying from the pure and the norm.
The default.
Yeah. Right. And when people when people are asked to stretch their expectation of what is good and normal, they lash out. And that all that does is hurt relationships.
It's uncomfortable. It's threatening.
Right.
Yeah. How about, so we've talked about, expectations from other people, our expectations on other people, but how about setting expectations on ourselves?
Yeah.
Like I know you mentioned to me, whether it's fitness related or whether it's, I don't know, anything related, work related, relationship related, how we we put so much pressure on ourselves to meet a certain expectation. Like, where is the dividing line, you think, between having goals and, having clear vision for ourselves, but becoming borderline like obsessive, or to the point where we put so much pressure on ourselves, or we're so rigid that we
Mm-hmm.
can't grow. We stop our growth,
Right.
actually.
Right. Yeah. I think one thing that I've like had ups and downs with historically, and that I need to look at more often, is what are expectations I have for myself when I'm in a good mood versus when I'm in a bad mood.
Mm,
So when I'm in a
good
bad
point.
mood, the expectations are a control thing. And you and I have talked a lot about trying to regain or maintain control in our lives, and how that can become something toxic.
Hmm.
Because it's one thing to have boundaries and healthy structure, and one thing to use it as a reaction to something that we're not dealing with emotionally. So I guess for me, it would be like you're talking about the fitness. If I feel some kind of rejection or some sort of jealousy, one of the first things that'll pop into my head is, well, I definitely need to work out 6 times this week. And I'm like, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
That's coming from this weird control, like, oh, well, I need to be able to say that I force myself to work out 6 times, do 6 intense workouts, because that means that I won. And it's like, but what do I win?
It's it's the
Yeah.
competition with yourself, or competition
Right,
with your ego. Yeah.
right. And
Right.
it's like, oh, because if I can just be able to say that I'm so into fitness, then that makes me more worthy. And it's like, well, that's
Hmm.
all kinds of wrong, you know?
Well, it's not wrong. It's just underlying fears, and it goes back, to the past again, or something that
Hmm.
happened, and just something that was ingrained in you that said, okay, I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel safe, or I don't feel whatever it is.
Hmm.
So yeah, you have to get to, like you said, the why, and kind of dig and delve into yourself, and where is that coming from? It's the same when we project onto other people, or we're triggered by things from other people. Like, where is that essentially coming from? It's coming from someplace deep
Yeah,
inside.
right.
I'm not being triggered for no reason, or I'm not being defensive for no reason,
Hmm. Totally.
so yeah.
Oh, I see Mike has a comment here.
My
Oh,
biggest
that's,
struggle is
yeah.
setting an expectation for myself and having others' opinions influence that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, there's nothing rougher, or, it's so frustrating when, Mike, I'm sure you've been through this. You get excited about a change you want to make, and you think it's going to make you a happier, healthier person. Then you announce it, and somebody just shits all over it, like giving you the reasons why it's unreasonable, why it's too
Or
risky.
or there's crickets, like nobody acknowledges it or validates it. And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've been there. It's like you feel very proud of yourself, or very like driven, and very
Hmm.
like this is awesome. Like, it's a
Hmm.
big deal to you. It's very emotional for you,
Yep.
and nobody else cares. Nobody
Right.
else acknowledges it or validates it. So that can be a struggle. And that goes back to our own feeling of being worthy, and self-worth. And
Hmm.
a lot of times it's our ego looking for something, grasping out for something to kind of make us feel at ease again. It's almost
Right.
like somebody who has OCD,
Yep.
and it's like that bubbling up of like tension, and it's like the only thing that's gonna make, it's like I have to do these certain things to make myself feel at ease, or something like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. As somebody with OCD, I get exactly what you're saying, because you have that compulsion to get reassurance.
Hmm.
That's a big thing for me. It's like, if I don't get reassurance from somebody, I'm going to explode. And it's the worst when they're like, oh, I think that idea is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
also a
get,
five element quality in the five elements of
okay.
metal quality,
Wait, can
which
you
you
go
and
a
I
little
have a
bit
lot of
into
metal
that?
in us. What's that?
Can you go a little bit into that?
So if for any of you who don't know me, I do a lot of videos on YouTube, and I talk about the five elements, which is part of Chinese medicine, and it's basically the dynamic in the universe. We have five elements, out in nature, fire, earth, metal, water, wood, but they also pertain to us and our personalities and how we adapt in the world, how we handle stress and things like that. So each of us has like one or two constitutional elements, and basically it shows how we react to things, what kind of maybe symptoms we're prone to, how we react emotionally to things. So it's a very interesting thing if you want to check it out. You could check out my YouTube channel. It's Jen Palco. Links will be like all my bio and stuff on my Instagram. But yeah, it's interesting. And one of the traits of a particular metal element is it's all about self-worth and needing to have like that acknowledgement and validation in your life. So that's one of the traits of that, where for somebody else, like for a wood element, it would be about like more competition and feeling like you're winning at something and stuff like that. So it's there's a lot to it, but it's, yeah, just to go a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it ties in so well with what I've, been annoyed at myself with in the past, right? It's like it's a double blow because I crave the reassurance and I'm not getting it. And then it's also an insult because you shouldn't live off somebody else's validation, of course.
Absolutely.
But it's just a good gesture for at least somebody to say, and that goes back to the communication issues, because you don't have to love everything that people choose to do, but you could say, oh, okay, well, I think I recognize you're really excited about this change. You really want it. So I hope everything works out great. It's not something that I would decide for myself, but we're two different people. Like, it's a very basic problem that is just so pervasive. Like, people using their own wants and comfort levels and applying it to everybody else when everybody is so different. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I wouldn't like that in my own life. Therefore, it's kind of my responsibility to tell everybody that what they're doing is not wise, which makes no sense at all.
Right. Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases, like going back to when we're changing something about ourselves and we're looking for that validation from other people, we feel like in a lot of cases that we need to proclaim it, or we need to, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Again, we feel the need to like have to have it. Again, this is a form of control. Us feeling like we have to have the other person understand where we're coming from.
Totally.
No, we don't. We don't. Where is that coming from? Again, where is that coming from?
Yep.
We do not need to have, like, I don't need to have you understand where I'm coming from in order to live my life. And I feel like that's where a lot of people will go through life and feeling that way. And again, this goes back to, we can't essentially change other people and they can't change us. Right. We have to consciously do it ourselves. So yeah, you have to look at where is that coming from, and realizing and shifting the perspective on it and saying, okay, why do I feel that I have to, that I must? That's just another form of control in my life. And it's probably relating back to that theme of where the other forms of control are coming out. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like you spend so much time and energy trying to make the other person understand, or thinking of ways you could get them to understand.
Right.
And all you're doing is I look at it as just trying to get approval from the other person. Like, if I could just frame it in this way, then they'll agree that this is a good choice.
But why? What is that giving you, right?
Exactly. Right.
What is that giving you, essentially?
Right. It's giving you nothing.
Right. It's giving you that sense of ease. Or it's making your ego feel better. It's giving you, it goes back to like the OCD, it's giving you that sense of ease. It's like addiction, right? We could relate this to so many things. It's like, I need my fix to feel normal, to feel comfortable again. Yep. It doesn't feel comfortable when I have somebody judging me, or knowing that somebody is out there that doesn't approve with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right? Where is that coming from within me? So it's not about the other person. It's life is a mirror, right? So it's always being reflected back to us. And exactly.
Yeah. When you're going to be at the same place in life, whether or not people get it.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
If you like have some tension in a relationship because somebody doesn't get it, then there are ways to keep, like, if you feel that you're getting helped and like you're really getting fulfillment in life from keeping that relationship, then there are ways to work around it. You know, you could very easily say, I know that we look at this in different ways. You don't really get why I made this choice, or I'm living the way I am, but we can just let it rest. Like, you can acknowledge that this is what I want to do and support me.
Right.
And if they are content to leave it at that, you don't need to dig any deeper.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have two choices. Like, you could live your life always efforting and trying to get everybody, not everybody 100% is going to approve of what you're doing in the world.
Right.
Like right now, we can't say that no matter how much we force people to try and understand and try to alleviate racism and prejudice and homophobia, we're never going to have 100% consensus, no matter how much we effort right now. Maybe someday we will, but that's going to take time because people aren't comfortable.
Right.
But it goes the same for us as individuals. Like, we can effort all we want and we can push and push, but a lot of times it's pushing against a brick wall.
Right.
And we're saying, well, how much of my energy am I putting out, am I giving away to other people?
Yes.
Instead of keeping that within myself and having the clarity I need and working on my own goals and being true to myself and staying aligned on my path and not letting other people, giving my power away and letting them redirect me in other areas just because I feel like I need that control to feel at ease.
Yeah.
So it's, it's really, it's interesting when you delve into it.
Yeah. And meanwhile, that other person is sitting pretty. They're not worried about what you think of them.
Right. Yeah, most people are focused on themselves, not you. I did this, and Mickey says, I did this and lost 2 friends in the process. I haven't felt more relieved. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's ruling out those toxic relationships.
Yeah.
And, there's people out there who feel like they need to be friends with everybody. But no, you don't, You have 1 or 2, like, really good friends who understand you, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it sucks to lose friends, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, why was that person in my life? Like, what were they giving me?
exactly.
And there's a reason they're not in your life anymore.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I harp on this a lot, Jen. One of the things that I took out of, you and I have discussed mindfulness plenty of times. You're very educated in mindfulness. And when I was, one of the things that I thought was so fascinating that I took from therapy was like the ancient biological reasons for why we react to certain things. So like the loss of a friendship, for example, like you feel a friendship is getting strained. It looks like it's going to fall apart, and you feel physically overwhelmed by it because your brain has been trained since the dawn of humankind to think that if you lose a friendship, you will lose your life. Like, you're not going to have a tribe anymore to help you find food, to defend you against animals, to give you shelter from the weather. But we're not living in those times anymore. Like, there are many ways to find new friends. You can take care of yourself. We have our own homes, our own ways of getting food. It's a completely different society now.
Right.
But our brains don't know that.
Right.
So,
the world has evolved and our brains are
right.
They're like 1 step behind in a lot of cases. Yeah.
So, like,
and you have to ask yourself, why am I attaching to this relationship, right?
Yeah.
Why am I attaching to old relationships that have been going? And the way that I see it, and we've all had friends that have kind of drifted away over the years, and the way I see it, it's opening up room for new friends and new people to come into our lives. So again, we're always changing. Everything around us is always in a state of change. And that goes for people. Like, nothing is supposed to just stay the same. Look at nature, right? We relate it back to nature. Nothing stays the same. The seasons change, and we go with the seasons, and just everything it's all connected, Tara.
I totally agree. Yeah. And then, you know, like in Mike's case is a perfect example. You and I have both been through it, Jen. Like, you lose a friend, it feels very raw and bizarre, and you almost feel like you're physically weakened by it, and then you adjust and the world doesn't end, you don't starve to death, and you, like you said, you open the door for either like additional relationships, or it could be a way to even strengthen the existing relationships you have, you know, the ones that remain. It's like,
Right.
well, I got rid of these people, let me focus on why I kept the rest of the people. You know, you can really get a clearer picture of how much they mean to you and how they lift you up and encourage you to change.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we grieve a lot of things in life, you know, and this goes for relationships. It's not only grieving the loss of somebody's life, we grieve constantly. We grieve friends that we used to have. We grieve, you know, old jobs that we used to have. We grieve any kind of change. Like the human emotion is grief, and it's a natural just part of us.
Yep.
And we do it, and it feels like the end of the world for, you know, a period of time. And then years later, we realize, oh, like we look back on it and we say, okay, I got over that. Like at the time, it feels so strong. It feels intense. It feels like I don't know how I'm going to live anymore.
Right.
But then somehow we manage to, you know, go through it.
Exactly. Right. And that's like, you know, we talk about the default settings, right? Like, you and I are defensive by nature. I'm also super negative by nature. And that's just that's a human condition thing. It's like, if the negative person is on guard, right? Like, you know, people look at the happy person, positive person as kind of like a sitting duck, right? Like, there's nowhere to go but down. And if you're negative, then you're always like ready for the next terrible thing to happen. So it's going to have less of a harmful effect on you. But then it ends up having a very harmful effect on you, because you can't really live healthily always being doom and gloom. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to show up in your world if you're always in that mindset. So it's the natural ebbs and just like you can't always be like happy, peppy, you know, it's the ebbs and flows of life. Like if you never know what it feels like to grieve or to feel sad or depressed, then you're never going to really understand the value of feeling really great.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
And events happen, you know, bad and good things happen regardless of the way you go about your regular life, right? So you can convince yourself that you should be sad and tense all the time and waste your time and energy on getting sucked into that. Or you can let yourself accept that you ebb and flow, and you should peacefully coexist with all of that movement. Right. And not just latch on to the negative because that feels safest. Because it's really not. It's really the most dangerous way to go through life.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be sitting in any one emotion. We have the emotions for a reason, all of them, but they're made to come up and then go out. So the moment we sit in emotion for so long, that's when we're going to get disharmony. That's when we're going to get, you know, physical manifestations in our body and disease and stuff like that. And we see that a lot even right now with COVID, like people sitting in fear, or people, they can't get over the loss of somebody or something in their life, and they're just attached to that emotion and they're holding on to it.
Right.
And it's going to start to affect not only emotionally, but like I said, physically. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like stress's effect on the body is so.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people just sit stressed all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Anything else? Or this was a good juicy conversation. I said juicy like 5 times in this, but yeah.
Yeah, I think
the word of the day.
I vomited out everything that had been on my mind. I don't know.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions? Or I know a lot of us can relate to this, and it's it's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's about being adaptable.
Yes.
About not being constricted in your life and flowing with your life. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's about being aware of when you're attaching to a certain emotion, or you're, being triggered by something, and looking into that further, and not just, letting your body's physiological reaction overpower you and overwhelm you.
Yes.
So I did a video about being a control freak I put out yesterday, and no, it was another video I did where I was talking about like heart and mind coordination, and how a lot of times there's a disconnect, and a lot of times we're so much in here, and we're just living our life from here, and it's based on past experiences, and we're projecting out, and we forget that this is disconnected, so it's about connecting the two, and living true to yourself, and realizing that even if you're triggered and you're defensive and sitting in emotions, it's okay. It's just being aware of when you're doing it, why you're doing it,
Right.
and starting to shift yourself into a place where you can either limit your time with people that are bothering you until you can build yourself back up. So it's about nourishing yourself and self-care, and not being a people pleaser all the time.
Right.
And, just having clarity on your own life, and who you are as a person, and making sure you're communicating with other people, and understanding that it's okay if other people don't understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Releasing that control that you have, your expectations of other people.
Yes, absolutely. The only adaptability that you're able to engineer is your own, right?
Yeah.
So if you can recognize that other people are not adapting, and you've been as good a communicator as you can with them, and you're not seeing a change that helps you, then that's something that needs to be accepted.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, you shouldn't always put yourself in a space where you feel like you need to defend against it, or, it shouldn't be a fight. It should just be an acceptance of it. And then you're in control of where you want to take that relationship.
Yeah. You're in control of your own destiny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you could, for example, you could leave. It could be healthiest for you to leave, and you could look at it as the blessing in disguise, like Mike said, or you could find your way around it. But it's about having the clearest view of what helps you.
Absolutely. Agree 100%.
Yeah.
Cool.
Another good chat, Jen.
Yes, this is great. We'll do it again. We'll do a live one, like
absolutely
live from the couch.
Yeah, because we started this like spring of 2020, so this will be the first one in the same place.
Yeah, awesome. So yes, thank you, Tara. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Really appreciate you coming here. If you want any more information on me, you could check out my Instagram or my website, jimpalco.com. Some of my videos on there. And other than that, we'll call it a day.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
cool.
Jen.
All right, thank you, everybody.